Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen this war in Iran all over the news and all over social media. And like always, everyone suddenly becomes an expert overnight. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized people aren't actually reacting to the full story. They're reacting to the headlines, the clips, and literally whatever political angle they already believe in. So in this video, I wanted to go through what people think is happening and then show you exactly what is actually happening in Iran. Come with me. So ever since this war started, all we've been seeing are protests in the UK, in Australia, and in America. And this is typically what they look like. So these are people who are standing against the war. They think what's happening in the war is bad and the supreme leader should just maintain power. And then you can see here when America was attacking, one of their missiles hit a school and killed hundreds of students, which is terrible. And then finally, I'll just show you this clip from the UK Parliament of a member, Stephen Flynn, talking about his view on the war.
To be clear, Donald Trump's war in Iran is illegal, and the situation that has unfolded since is verging on insane. Oil is falling from the skies, sewers are exploding, the IRGC is indiscriminately attacking civilians across the region, cargo ships and potentially even mining the Strait of Hormuz, the economic consequences of which will be stark for the global economy, but for every single person living on these isles too. And whether the Prime Minister accepts it or not, he did indeed take us into that war when he allowed the Americans to use UK bases just last week. But I have a specific question. He'll have seen the same footage I have of an American Tomahawk missile landing on a primary school, killing 110 children. Does he believe that to be a war crime?
So pretty powerful stuff. A lot of people are very against this war, and you see it all over in the head news or in the headlines for all the media sources. But to really understand what's going on, we need a little bit of context and history. So it all began in Iran in about the 1950s when this gentleman over here was the leader of Iran. He was a democratic elected prime minister of Iran, and his name was Mohammad Mossadegh. I probably butchered that, but here he is, right? And so he was trying to nationalize the mining of oil in Iran because obviously they had so much. And America didn't really like that, right? Because the American companies were coming in and they were taking the oil. So what they decided to do was set up a coup, and then they got rid of the prime minister, and then they put up this gentleman right here, who was the king of Iran, who was a once deposed monarch, and his name was Pahlavi, okay? Now, Pahlavi was amazing for Iran at the time. He was revolutionizing education. He was trying to push for this nuclear energy movement that he worked with America to instill. And then in 1957, he worked with Western allies, primarily the US, to set up a civilian use of nuclear power under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Probably said that wrong too, but not very good with names. And so they created this Atoms for Peace program. And so they brought over nuclear reactors to Iran. They sent some uranium. And Iran was really flourishing at the time. Literacy rates were going up. Businesses were booming. Everything was going really well. But there was a bit of rockiness in Iran as to how connected Pahlavi was to Western allies. And Iran didn't really like that. And so obviously Pahlavi decided that he didn't really want protests to go violent, and so he actually fled the country and flew to America with his son, who was the prince, okay? And then what happened was an exiled Islamic scholar, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, returned and he started ruling the country. And along with that, he brought Islam. And so the country at the time was secular, you could be Christian, Muslim, whatever, it didn't matter. But he came in, he said, the primary religion in this country is Islam now, okay? And he's been ruling the country for the last 47 years. Obviously, he died, and then, his sidekick came in, and he's the supreme leader that we've all seen on the news. Now, the problem with this is that this new leader and their group was really pushy when it came to religion and their laws. The Iranian people didn't like them because some of them said, I want to be Christian. Can I be Christian? And they said, no, you cannot. We will kill you if you decide to be a Christian. And they were like, that's not very fair. And so they were very pushy, and they were very violent, they were corrupt, and they caused a lot of turmoil in Iran, and they have been since 1970s. And the funny thing is that America has known about this the whole time. If you want to get a more in-depth, detailed understanding of the history of Iran, I'll link this article in the description, but it basically just goes step by step what happened since the 1950s up until now of what's happening in Iran. We have a clip from 2015 from Marco Rubio, who's currently helping Trump deal with Iran here, but you can see him vocalizing his issues with Iran in 2015. So this was about 11 years ago. Take a watch.
For history's purposes, before I know what was going to happen in regards to this if it goes through. Iran will immediately use the money that it's receiving in sanctions relief to begin to build up its conventional capabilities. It will establish the most dominant military power in the region outside of the United States, and it will raise the price of us operating in the region. They're going to build anti-access capabilities, rockets capable of destroying our aircraft carriers and ships, continue to build these swift boats that are able to come on us, these fast boats that are able to swarm our naval assets. And they'll make it harder and harder for U.S. troops to be in the region. They'll also work with other terrorist groups in the region to target American servicemen and women. And they may or may not deny that they're involved, but they will target us and raise the price of our presence in the Middle East until they hope to completely pull us out of that region. They'll also continue to build long-range missiles, missiles capable of reaching the United States. Those are not affected by this deal, and they'll continue to build them as they've been doing. And then at some point in the near future, when the time is right, they will build a nuclear weapon. And they will do so because at that point they will know that they have become immune, that we will no longer be able to strike their nuclear program because the price of doing so will be too high. Iran is led by a supreme leader who is a radical Shia cleric with an apocalyptic vision of the future. He is not a traditional geopolitical actor who makes decisions on the basis of borders or simply history, or because of ambitions. He has an religious apocalyptic vision of the future, one that calls for triggering a conflict between the non-Muslim world and the Muslim world, one that he feels especially obligated to trigger. And he's going to possess nuclear weapons. This is the world that we are on the verge of leaving our children to inherit, and perhaps we ourselves will have to share in it. And so I want to be recorded for history's purposes, if nothing else, to say that those of us who opposed this deal understood where it would lead, and we are making a terrible mistake.
So you get my point. They knew that this was happening literally 30 years in the past. And we've just slowly watched this progression of the Iran government building weapons, missiles, enriching uranium, and, causing havoc in the Middle East, sponsoring terrorist groups, stuff like that, which is not great. And then you can see here, on the missiles that they shot at countries, Israel, and other countries in the Middle East, they wrote thank you messages on their missiles, thanking certain political governments for sending them money. So you can see here they said thank you Pakistan, thank you Spain, thank you German people, thank you people of India. So these are governments and individuals from those countries who were sending money to the IRGC, which is the government of Iran, to basically sponsor them in building all of these weapons and building this huge military power that they are today. The US has known about this for a while. Obama and Biden have sent money to Iran to provide economic growth. And they were basically trying to be diplomatic and saying, like, guys, we know you want to be powerful and, run the country properly. Here's some money just to calm down. We don't want you to build any nuclear weapons. Just focus on growing as a country. And obviously they said, yeah, we'd love it. And they sent billions of dollars over. And we've seen recently that they've used all of that money to continue to enrich their uranium, to build missiles, weapons, navy, submarines, fighter jets, that kind of stuff. And so this comes up to why Trump attacked in the first place. Now, Trump had reason to believe from his intelligence inside Israel and inside Iran that the Iranian nuclear program was aiming to build nuclear weapons and that they were getting closer and closer to their target of 90% enrichment in the weeks to come. Okay? To put this into context, right, to have nuclear energy in a country, you need about 3 to 5% nuclear enrichment of uranium. Okay, 3 to 5%. The IRGC's uranium is 60% enriched. So the only reason you would have uranium enriched any higher than 5 to 10% is for weapons. You can see here the CIA director explaining this at one of his conference meetings. Take a watch.
Yeah, much has been made by some about a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. Notwithstanding the fatwa, what we know, and the intelligence community is in agreement on this, is that Iran possesses at least 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to weapons grade 60%, which doesn't have a civilian use. The only use for that would be the development of nuclear weapons.
So now we can understand why Trump attacked in the first place, okay? They're trying to build nuclear weapons. Now you may be thinking tons of countries have nuclear weapons. What's the point of, well, what's wrong with, they just want to defend themselves. If you take a look at this is one of their political meetings. One of their political meetings, in Parliament. And this is them chanting death to America. Take a watch. So I think you get the point. They're basically just chanting death to America, and in another clip, they're chanting death to Israel. They really do not like America, and they really do not like Israel. So they're developing nuclear weapons, and they have this huge hatred towards the Western countries, like America, Israel, and the UK. And so the Iranian people for the last 20 to 25 years have been protesting against the government. They do not want the government to be in power anymore. And they bravely continue to protest and protest. And this is what happens when they protest. The IRGC responds with violence. Anytime the Iranians protest, they shoot them. Okay? They're trying to get rid of them as quick as they can. And you can't see anything in the clip, but you can hear this machine gun going off in the background. And you already know exactly what they're using the machine gun for. Now, the most recent protest that the Iranians did, there's about 92 million people in Iran. About 30 million of those people were protesting this year. And it was the biggest protest in the history of Iran, okay? And what the IRGC did was diabolical. It was terrible. It doesn't even sound real when I say it. But they switched off the internet, so no one in Iran can contact out of it, and no one out of Iran can contact in it. So you don't know what's going on. And then the next time the internet is available, they find out that the IRGC had massacred 40,000 Iranians in 2 days. And then even worse than this, believe it or not, it gets worse. They invoiced the families of the people who died, and they said, you need to pay us this money because we had to spend bullets on killing your family. You can see this in the prince's speech here. Take a watch.
Under the cover of darkness, and with a depravity that shocked the world, they massacred more than 40,000 Iranians and injured over 300,000. They did not stop their terror on the streets. Wounded protesters were hunted down in hospital beds and shot in cold blood. Men and women were raped in secret prisons. Even nurses, ambulance medics, and doctors who dared to help protesters were tortured, raped, and killed. Families were forced to search through thousands of unmarked body bags, and the regime even charged grieving parents for the bullets used to kill their own children.
So this is heavy stuff. They just massacred 40,000 of their own citizens for protesting against them. And if you need even more evidence as to how bad this government is and how evil they are, recently, last year, the Iranian government shot down a Ukrainian civilian plane and killed every single person on the plane. It was shot down by an Iranian missile. And what they did was continue to, they said it was Trump shot the plane down, Trump's evil. And then the UN actually had to step in. The UN themselves came out and said that it was Iran. And they killed 176 people from that plane, which is terrible. And then here's another thing. They started putting these posters up around the place after the Supreme Leader died and his son took over. And it's basically, if you can't read it, it's basically comparing the new Supreme Leader to Hitler. I don't have to explain anything. Like, jeez, this is terrible. This is terrible. And people are protesting for this. People are walking down the street in America and saying this is what we need. Okay, so anyway, America attacked, right? And you would think that if you're being attacked, you would attack back. But no, Iran has something even, I should say, the IRGC has something better up their sleeves. Instead of attacking America and Israel back, you know what they did? They went ahead and shot every neighboring country near them. Just to like piss everyone off. They shot Kuwait, killing seven people. They shot Qatar, they shot the UAE, they shot Oman, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Palestine, Cyprus, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Now, most of these were American military bases situated in those countries. But most of the people who died were just regular civilians. They had nothing to do with the war, no involvement. This is how they retaliated to being attacked. And they've recently blocked the Strait of Hormuz so no oil can get out. So their solution to being attacked is just to piss everybody off as much as humanly possible and cause as much chaos and havoc because they know they're going to fall. And so it brings us back to this clip here of the missile that hit the school. What you see is a missile hitting a school. Of course, that's terrible. And the US did hit this school, okay? I'm not denying that. But what they don't tell you is that inside of this same school is a IRGC watchtower for the Navy. What's a watchtower doing inside of a school? It's a bit interesting, isn't it? And that's because what they do is they build schools inside the military bases. Why do they do that? Because they want to use people as human shields. That's why they transport weapons from hospital to hospital in ambulances. And that's why they build schools in military bases. And you know what they did? The reason those kids died was because the IRGC didn't evacuate the schools. And so none of the students were evacuated in the midst of this war where bombs were going off for weeks and weeks. And they built the school in a military base using kids as human shields. Like, there is no words to describe the level of cooked that is. And so this clip of this missile going off went everywhere. I showed you the UK Parliament speech. It was all over the news in America. On TikTok, it's everywhere. And then you know what the IRGC did? They admitted, after lying and saying it was America, they admitted here, this was an inadvertent mistake and that serious action will be taken against those responsible for the action. So the missile that hit the school was an Iranian missile. And so this clip of the missile that you see, you don't see where the missile is coming from. This is the extended clip of the same missile. Take a watch. The Iranian missile failed and trajectoried straight down into the ground, and right below was the school. So next time you see news about this war, please have a more open mind as to what's going on. I'm not telling you to believe everything I say. All of these sources and resources that I've grabbed, I know they're on Twitter, but I've verified them with multiple primary sources who have intel inside of Iran. Everything that I've told you is stuff that I've verified and checked with them, and they said, yes, this has happened, okay? What I'm telling you to do is to be a little bit more open as to what's going on and not to believe the first thing you hear. Just because the majority of people are saying something does not mean that thing is true. If all the news lines are telling you how bad it is that Trump shot down the school, don't just follow it along blindly. Do some research, dig into it, see what actually happened. Because what we see nowadays is people just follow the sheep, right? They listen to what somebody has to say and they just follow it blindly instead of doing any sort of independent research. This is what's really happening in Iran. And if you have any sense, you will see that what's happening is good. And that, yes, pain and suffering is terrible, people are dying, and it's, no one should have their life taken away from them. But the IRGC were weeks away from developing nuclear weapons, and they actively hate the West, and you've seen that they've shot missiles at all of these neighboring countries. You can just imagine what they would do with nuclear weapons. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed, leave a like, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.